What the world is searching for: the Bible versus the Quran versus manga. So the blue is showing just how dominant the Bible still is in the Western Hemisphere, in the southern part of Africa, and in certain areas still in Europe. Then of course we have the Quran in the Islamic world, so most of Africa as well as the Middle East, but it does stretch out all the way to Indonesia and Bangladesh. But finally, the newcomer, manga, out of nowhere. It's even beginning to spread a little bit in the Western Hemisphere here in Cuba. This is of course French Guiana. France is obviously a manga fan. And are there a lot of weebs in Chile, or what's going on? Not gonna lie, these results are kind of insane. How is it so popular? And technically, according to my own Google Trends results, the Quran isn't even dominant in North Africa. It's manga there as well. Also, the entirety of Latin America might already be lost. Now, to be fair, in places like India, China, Japan, the Quran or the Bible aren't the most popular books. It's not shocking that manga's winning out here. Europe, on the other hand, is a little bit of a different story. I don't know how manga has such a stranglehold. Again, as always, when it comes to these search result maps, this could be just a bunch of people figuring out what the heck manga even is. I can see why a lot of people would be searching what is manga instead of what is the Bible or what is the Quran. Doesn't matter which pillar of philosophy you follow, all three of them do not believe in the fictional islands of New Zealand. A map that shows how far you can travel with a 5-hour train ride. So this can be done entirely without cars right here. Wow, from there, that is insane. Remind me to take a train out of Belgium. You can get all the way down to southern France or almost Scotland. Why is it so good there? Also, Paris, France is a good spot. Notice that a lot of these are really in like Western Europe. More Western you get. I wish the map showed us more of the continent. That'd be interesting. Oh, and actually we do have that ability. So from Madrid, Spain, you can pretty much get throughout any part of the country within 5 hours. Pretty much the same goes for Rome, Italy as well. Even Warsaw in Poland? Now that's crazy. I thought there was maybe a reason why they were trying not to show some of this side, but no, these countries got, oh, okay, well, Romania is having a tough time. So are the Balkans as well, but Greece can, well, Greece also struggles. Northern Europe as well, not quite as impressive. It is still pretty good though, kind of. I mean, it's 5 hours, maybe it's not that great. From Dublin, you can get to almost any part of Ireland. And this map might need to be updated one day whenever this tunnel gets built. It's going to allow a high-speed rail link between Italy and France. It looks like it's just gonna go straight through the Alps. How armies are organized today. So 8 soldiers create a section commanded by a corporal. 2 to 4 of those sections, or anywhere between 16 to 32 soldiers, is a platoon. Those are commanded by lieutenants or supported by a sergeant. Anywhere between 3 to 5 platoons creates a company, which are commanded by a major. A battalion is anywhere between 2 to 7 companies, or somewhere around like 1,000 soldiers. Then 1 to 3 battalions equals a regiment. There's probably about a couple thousand soldiers in this one. I'm already getting really lost, but oh, I clearly got really lost. Somehow we went from regiment to brigade. These are divisions led by a major general. Corps are 1 to 2 divisions, and then finally a field army and led by a general or lieutenant general. I feel like I look up this information like once a month and I always forget it. The problem is the definitions were pretty loose. Like if you notice, it was always like 1 to 2 or 3 to 4, and it's like, how do you know? Why isn't there a standard number? I guess I'm just gonna try to focus on remembering what a platoon is and then like work my way up slowly. This really gives a whole new meaning when you encircle a division in Hoi 4. That's 10 to 15,000 troops losing. Here is the total number of military and civilian casualties during the First World War. Just like the Second World War, it was the Eastern Front that was pretty brutal. But Hungary took a pretty big hit as well, almost 3 million or 13.7% of the population. How did Austria-Hungary manage to lose less than 1 million than Germany did? I always forget that the UK lost a third less than France during this whole thing, and poor Belgium, they were just caught in the crossfire. What even happened to the Scandinavian countries? How did they lose people? Of course, there was more than just the continent of Europe involved, so the US lost only 100,000, and the rest are British colonies or Japan even. Wait, Japan only, wait, what? Japan only had to lose 400 dudes to get all these German islands out here in the Pacific. So many of these casualty maps are focused on World War II, but World War I is pretty crazy as well. Interestingly, both the British and the French had more casualties in World War I than they did in World War II. No wonder they didn't want to do that whole thing again. Countries with a Germanic language as an official language. Remember, we're not just talking German here, we're talking Danish, English, Dutch, Icelandic, Norwegian. This would be a whole lot of random places with just German as their official language. It's actually only Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, but there is Belgium and Luxembourg with both. All this red can be traced back to the British Empire. Remember, in the US, we don't actually have an official language, which is actually pretty funny considering all the people that think you should speak English here. To be honest though, I kind of expected to see a little bit more of the map fill filled in. Here's a similar map with all the Romance languages though. The lighter color symbolizes it's not an official language, but it's still very important. So green is obviously Spanish, orange is Portuguese. All this blue here is French, but overall pretty severe lack of Romance languages in this part of the world. Of course, the Philippines had both Spain and the US take over for a little bit there, and Japan. They've been through a lot. It's really not a whole lot of Italian when you really think about it, just considering how much they've done throughout history. The US government's 2021 revenue versus expenditure. So it looks like they make most of their revenue from individual income taxes as well as Social Security and Medicare taxes. And then there's a whole lot of little things that contribute kind of as well. But then if you look at all the money that we're spending on income security, Social Security, health, national defense, Medicare, there's obviously a pretty giant deficit. There's not enough money coming in compared to the money that's going out. Is this a $2 trillion deficit as of 2021? That doesn't seem good. And this isn't anything new, right? I mean, this is just how things have been going for a few decades. What's strange to post a review back to back every space launch in history? Maybe this will explain some stuff. So starting in the 60s, obviously, we have the US with over 300, 400 space launches? USSR slowly catching up, but we have France, Japan, the UK, and a collaboration with all of Europe joining the gang. By the 1970s, the USSR really starts to kind of come in a little bit close. I believe we've already gotten to the moon by now, and the USSR has actually launched more things into space by 1975. So when the USSR like disappears in 1991, is this bar just gonna disappear or does Russia take over? USA just kind of stops by the early 1980s. I mean, they're doing it slowly, but wow, how much were they spending on this space stuff? I didn't know the Soviets were so obsessed with that. We also have a couple other people joining, China, Italy. Soviets have doubled the amount of launches into space by the time we get to 1991, and I'm gonna assume that everything's gonna stop. Yeah, so things have literally just halted. Are they gonna keep that up throughout the 90s? Or they just, I don't know, but the USA slowly gained and a little bit. Yeah, here comes Russia. I see what they did there. How are the Soviets still launching? What the heck? Is that Kazakhstan launching it when they were still the Soviet Union? So now Russia, really, you can kind of combine these two, right? Russia and the USSR. India joins in the gang as well. So we still have not caught up. The US still has not caught up to the number of space launches, even to this day. That's how much they were just blasting up there. Look at China out of nowhere though. By 2021, they're gaining a lot of ground on Russia. Didn't even know that Iran was launching stuff. They've launched 12. They were doing like 1 launch a week. It's like the US got to the moon and we were just like, all right, we done. I love that decades later, France is still going. Even if France got beat by China, France was still like the biggest European power that was still launching stuff up there. UK just like dropped off. UK literally did 9 and they were like, okay, now we're done. Israel did a couple too as well. I love how drastically like the actual launches down here get shown. I mean, in the 60s, it's really just blue and red. And then slowly it's really just red in the 80s because there's barely any blue. And then now it's a pretty big mixture of things. We've got China, there's France, there's the US, there's still Russia going. What exactly are all these things? What are we launching into space this much? Is it just garbage or something? Some of them maybe could be garbage. I really like this animation. And here's that first British launch colorized, just for the historical significance. The net domestic migration by state. So unsurprisingly, the US is losing the most, and Florida has actually been gaining the most. Texas is doing pretty good though, they're in 2nd place, and Arizona as well has also been doing pretty amazing. Some pretty big losses also in the East Coast from Massachusetts, New York, and Illinois. Some of those people might be going to North Carolina or South Carolina. Interesting that Tennessee and Georgia are here. I know a lot of people that moved to Georgia. Also Idaho looking pretty blue. So for the people that are leaving, they're either in the Northeast, the Rust Belt, or just California in general. But Louisiana seems to be one of the only southern states that have lost a little bit. Hawaii and Alaska just staying the exact same. So are most Californians just going to Arizona and Texas? I'm assuming most of these New Yorkers are just going down south, probably to Florida. California has nearly lost a whole %, while like South Carolina, Florida, and North Carolina have gained a %. So if this just like keeps up for 10 more years, what happens? A proposal for a greater Idaho. And I have no idea why. Whoever made this is a very big fan of Washington because Washington is untouched and they really despise Oregon, although they keep Oregon alive for some reason. Why not just give that to Washington at this point? You're also chopping up this part of California. Man, what is the reasoning behind this? Like, I am so confused someone went through the trouble of making all this. This is just giving me Balkan vibes. The 10 greatest acquisitions of all time. Disney buying Marvel for $4.2 billion. It returned $13 billion and still counting. Also, Disney buying ESPN for only $188 million. That was a huge return. $26 billion. Google bought Google Maps. Wait, they bought Maps? What does that mean? What map did they buy? Was there a whole separate company called Google Maps that just ripped off the Google name? I don't know. eBay technically owns PayPal as of when? That's a huge return though. They only bought it for 1.5 billion. Of course, Google bought Android for 50 million, yet it returned over $100. Google bought YouTube for 1.65 billion, and yet, oh my goodness, that is a crazy return. But they bought them like 10 to 15 years ago, so it's understandable. Google is like using YouTube to be like their new Netflix, or at least they're trying to be it like that. There's no way they could have predicted this. They just got really lucky. Facebook was kind of saved by Instagram, at least momentarily. They bought it for only $1 billion, and yet it's returned this much. Finally, the biggest of them all, the best acquisition ever. I don't even know what DoubleClick is. Acquired by Google for 3.1. What is DoubleClick? 3.1 billion, and yet it's returned 182 billion. And again, this stuff is all still counting. Like, this is for right now. All these bars are just going to keep on going up, I think. Oh, it's an advertisement company, and it was bought in 1995. So this is how they're throwing all the ads and everything. That's like where all their money comes from. Wait, no, they bought it in 2007. It's freaky that a company can make this much money and like people have never heard of it. Seems fishy. Now hold on, where's the Louisiana Purchase on this chart? Some fun facts from the New England Aquarium official Twitter account. A language lesson from your friendly neighborhood aquarium. This is a fish. These are fish, but multiple species are fishes. Wait, there are things called fishes? I don't know if I've ever said fishes in my life because I was afraid that it wasn't like accurate. Something still doesn't feel right about that. Look at all these fishes. Something's fishy. I thought about that like 10 seconds ago, and I was trying to get myself to not say it. I obviously couldn't resist them. The top 20 annual polluting rivers around the world. To start off the list, we have Nigeria, Indonesia, and then there's going to be a lot of China. Oh, there's a Taiwan as well. There's a shared one with China, but also, this is a huge river. I forget about the Mekong. A lot of Indonesia, a lot of Myanmar, a lot of Asia in general. Oh, but the Amazon. And then finally the top 5, Nigeria, we've seen a couple times, and then the rest is pretty much all China. Oh, India's putting all their pollutants into one river. Okay, yeah, so what is going on with China in these rivers? There's a lot. They've shown up way too many times in the top 20. Each cube here equals 1,000 tons of plastic. Whoa, 1,000 tons of plastic? It seems like a bad idea. Here's a map version of this, and yeah, it is specifically coming from this part of the world. Percentages of plastics inadequately managed by country. Probably doesn't help if you're making a lot of plastics as well. You'd think there'd be a lot more recycled, but I guess not. We still barely put a dent in it. It seems like it's mostly coming from packaging, but also building and construction. This is interesting because we just reviewed the Great Garbage Patch out there in the Pacific recently. Wonder if this has anything to do with that whole thing. And big thanks to Twick and Hamster, the Polish Lithuanian Commonwealth, Drew's Argentinian Grandpa, Aushtin, Powersh, Fazha, $20 is a lot, Drew, aPhatNarwhal, Barnsky W, Isaac, I guess, bringbackpolandball, Cowboys 83, Price, istoledrewspetdog, Monday, ortin 5610, Philipp RF, Robert E, RyeThePie, the Mexican 760. And why am I doing this?